come to our side of the fence.
Today we've been asked multiple times by staff members and friends and family in the business, outside of the business, contractors, realtors, people in the service industry, just kind of how Tim's fencing came about, and how we are sitting here today. So that's going to be our main goal of today's conversation. It's just Tim and I in here.
Just us. And even how we're in Knoxville. Like, that's a very common question still, although its popularity has grown immensely.
So I think we'll start off with how Tim and I met, and then just jump probably to moving to Knoxville.
Yeah, and I mean, we met in probably 2006. Battleground, Washington. It was a lot of years ago. Dated in high school, on and off after high school.
I remember so distinctly the first time I saw Tim. He was riding a skateboard at the skate park, and I was like, who is that boy?
Who's that man chub? And it all started there. So you were dating a friend of mine. That's how we met, Brandon. And yeah, like I said, typical, on and off again. Then you were going to college. I was already working for myself after high school, and came back in town, and you were dating another guy, another friend of mine, which is fine. It wasn't like
We
that.
lived in a small town, okay?
It wasn't homie hopping.
There wasn't that,
There
wasn't that many pics of
and all the guys were friends, Anybody outside like this certain religion, we're all friends, and yeah, that's just where it all came about. That was a funny start though, because you worked for your boyfriend's mom,
I did.
stepmom.
I did.
But
I
she
love
liked
that
me.
job so much.
Yeah, and they were a great family too. Honestly, they're like the matriarchs of the town and gainful employers of many, especially young people in Battleground, and great family.
You saw my dad at the farm store.
Excuse me.
Again,
Yes.
going back to that small town.
The farm, we ran into each other at Wilco.
And my dad goes, you should text Tim Wells. Just give him a call.
Absolutely. I was only in town for a couple days, though. So there's some irony there. But, yeah, fast forward, engaged in 2013, married in 2014. And really at that point, you were finishing up college, had just graduated, and I was a general contractor. So definitely focused on, exterior home services, fencing, decking, siding, roofing, insurance work, and you kind of took a step into the nonprofit world, and then due to some advice from a close mentor and friend, got into real estate.
I decided I had this long-term goal, and the whole reason I went to college was to work for a nonprofit. I did it and decided it was not for me. I'm much too soft-hearted to work in that sort of a mind space. And so I left the nonprofit I was working for, and for a while was like, I'm just going to work. I'm going to help Tim. He needed help. His business was going well. He just needed help like answering the phones, getting clients their bids back, communicating with insurance companies while Tim was out at, job sites and actually running the day-to-day and running staff. And
And I think that was cool too, because already at that point too, I wasn't on the job site 24/7. Like we had a handful of employees, usually 3, 4, 5 on staff, and then we had some great subcontractors, Alex Amato doing roofing, and people like Jim Nolan who would stretch carpet for us on some of our interior remodels, and things are just a lot different out west, and even our material providers were extremely helpful logistically on assisting and running jobs. So that was great for you to be able to communicate efficiently with all of them. Definitely a big help, because you're right, I was training people, getting material, dealing with clients. That's a full-time job.
That's a full-time job in and of itself. So I just noticed that Tim needed help. And that's where it started, was I was just going to help for a little while. And I've never looked back. I love working with my husband every day.
You'd ride your moped to the job sites
I would
if
ride
they
my
weren't
moped.
too far. Because we lived, kind of set the scene too. In early 2013, I had, through an investor, bought an old house that I was supposed to just remodel for him, and we ended up working out a deal on it. And I mean, we honestly owe probably a lot of success to that man right there, as you'll hear in
Absolutely.
the story. But so we did that, and we only lived like, gosh, 5 minutes from downtown Vancouver, Washington. And then, really about 10 minutes from downtown Portland, 15 minutes depending on traffic. So we were just in a great area as a young married couple, restaurants, bars, friends. We had great neighbors. And really, we worked so much right there where we lived. And in hindsight, like I was just thinking about that the other day, like although we ran a lot of jobs in Oregon and in Portland, our larger scale jobs,
Yeah.
that we did a lot in Vancouver, a lot of fence, a
Yeah.
lot of deck,
It was
siding.
definitely a fun period. But the time came that Tim and I, and we still do to this day, we just strived for more. We wanted, what was that next step? What's happening next? And we
A lot
just,
of that was, materialistic. A little bit. We
yeah,
wanted the
a
bigger
little materialistic,
house
yeah.
and the nicer neighborhood, and we were making good money, and
But
it was
it-
just hard to see what that financially we were gonna have to pay for a little bit better.
Yeah, we just really quickly realized that in that specific part of the country, more was definitely, well,
And the school, we
oh
wanted
yeah,
to be, we wanted to live right. We loved
we
the
love,
general area, but the school district we were in because it did the IB program,
oh yeah, I
and
forgot about that.
in the Columbia River, the high school was everything that fed that. Like home prices were
We're
even back
crazy.
then in 2013, 20 into 2014, 15, like that next house was going to be $500,000.
Yeah.
There's no way. There's no way around it. If we wanted 2,000 plus square feet, in Ashley Heights or any of those neighborhoods, like it was going to be $500,000.
And that just felt, as 21-year-olds, incredibly unattainable.
And it was going to need rehab,
And
really,
it was
at
going to
that
need
price.
completely gutted at that price. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so we started a conversation of moving, and I grew up moving every 2 years. I was a military brat. So moving to a different state was not something new to me.
And we all know I like change. So I'm like, let's go.
So we immediately weren't like, if we're going to move, let's just move 30 minutes down the road. We're like, if we're going to move, we're moving to a different state.
Because I think, too, like we talked a little bit about Bend, Oregon, which is in central Oregon. And, it, 3.5, 4 hours at most from where we were living. To me, that was almost so close that if there was a couple months we didn't like it, it would be too easy for us just to be like, let's sell this house. Let's move back. Like, to us, moving had to just be
It had
drastic.
it had to feel like there was no going back.
Had to feel very new.
So Tim is, if you don't know this, Tim is a very methodical thinker. He thinks in numbers. And so he started doing some research on his own about different places in the U.S., their median household income versus the price of a home, and kind of came up with a list of what, 3 or 4 places that it made sense on paper.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
move.
And a lot of that too is like, I don't want to say it's fear based, but the Pacific Northwest got hammered in the recession. You're talking houses one year sold for 300, next year sold for 80. When we were looking at this too, I weighed into like, how hard were these markets affected, by the recession, and the one thing about the Southeast is it didn't quite have as big of a building surge, in the 80s and 90s like the West Coast did. And really here in Knoxville specifically, to me, it's like Oak Ridge. You have a lot of Department of Energy and Department of Defense money and jobs, high caliber jobs. And then also the University of Tennessee, with interim professors and staff professors, like that's a very, very large employer with benefits and everything else. Like it's an attractive city in Tennessee to move to for that reason.
And both are pretty much recession proof. Like the university may be affected slightly by a recession.
But I mean, I don't think nuclear power quite goes through the same downswing as, say the real estate market or the mortgage lending or anything SEC based on Wall Street. Those kind of things. Obviously, you're going to see some major downticks. But Knoxville on paper was comfortable. Like Nashville would have been great, but you know, it was already trending financially the same as the Pacific Northwest. And honestly, like we liked Denver, we
Yeah.
liked Montana, we like this. We've enjoyed visiting and vacationing in those states, but it was the same thing. Like if you look at Bozeman or Kalispell or you know, even parts of Wyoming that are just going crazy financially, and that's just we just didn't want to be stuck overpaying for real estate. We were pretty short-sighted at that point. We're like,
Yeah.
maybe we can own a house cash.
Yeah,
And
that was the big goal. I remember when we were looking. So we ended up getting plane tickets and coming to Knoxville to check it out. We got a cheap hotel because we were 21 years old
on Merchants.
in a horrible part of town.
Not horrible, but not great.
I mean, it wasn't.
It was by the Court South, across the street from the Court South there on Merchants.
Yep. And we came and we said we're gonna stay here for a week. And our big goal was we were going to drive around and look at properties that we knew we were gonna be able to purchase cash after we sold our house in Vancouver, Washington.
And there was a lot. There was a lot of houses that, because when we moved here and when we were visiting, like you could buy houses that were livable, ugly, but livable for 40, 50, 60. So, you know, we show up and it was like a Black Friday sale from the year 2000 at Walmart. Like everything just seemed so cheap, but nothing was selling. And, you know, because this truly was before Knoxville was on the map for the real estate market. And I remember we were like, holy cow, we could buy 2 houses.
Yeah. But there was some ups and downs on that week trip. I remember
It was a horrible trip,
it
honestly.
was it was horrific.
We did zero research of like where we should hang out. I do think we had dinner and drank at Balter Beer Works that one night, which was like probably the saving grace of the trip. Because we're like, this is cool.
Yeah, and we did that whiskey tasting at that place.
Knox Whiskey
Knox
Works.
Whiskey Works.
And then I think we went somewhere on Gay Street too.
Yeah, but the rest of the time we were not in a great part of town. And I remember what I had a complete meltdown in front of that Ross's.
It was on Clinton Highway, the Walmart parking lot.
And
right
I was
there.
like, we're not moving. This is horrible. I hate it here. Oh.
Yeah, and then we moved.
And then we went back home.
We went on the stern wheeler too. That was one thing. We did like the day we got here, and it was raining a little bit.
It was raining.
And,
yeah.
Gosh.
But
the people were nice.
But we had already, before we even came to Knoxville, we had told so many people we were moving. Like it was done.
Oh, it was a done deal.
So
and we knew what we could sell our house for, and we had a substantial, especially for those years, we had a substantial amount. I felt like it was a substantial amount.
Yeah,
Still to this day, that's a lot of money to me.
yeah, I did too. So we went home. I was a realtor in Washington State at the time, so I listed our house. It sold the next day. We closed 27 days later and filled up Tim's truck and a enclosed trailer with everything we could, sold the rest, put our 2 dogs in the truck, and drove to Knoxville. And it was wild. We didn't know anything, so I had to find us an apartment on the way here that took dogs. We found one. And
which was off of Western Avenue.
yeah, it wasn't a great apartment, but it was fine. It did the job. We get here. We get pregnant with our son a week later.
Well, we buy the house first. We didn't know.
Pregnant. We bought a house that needed completely remodeled, but we bought it cash, so we did that goal. And we remodeled it, and in the midst of all that, got pregnant with our son, which was not part of the plan, obviously. It's okay. God has a different plan.
And then...
And
we bought the apartment complex. We bought a little apartment complex
so
in East Knoxville.
We went a little ham because we had this pile of cash that we had made off of that house in Vancouver, Washington. And like Tim said, everything felt like it was Black Friday. So we bought a house we thought we were going to live in. We bought a 6-plex apartment complex.
Seven.
And we were like...
And then right on the back side of that, we started using a hard money lender, and we bought our first start to finish flip.
Our first flip.
Bought the house to flip it, sold it.
Yep. We both became licensed realtors in the state of Tennessee and all of that time too.
Correct. So we had a whole lot of change. Really, at this point, going from being a full-scale construction company, I told myself, hey, I'm done. I'm hanging up the bags. I worked on our own flips, but as far as retail construction services, that just
That
honestly, it wasn't in the game plan. We didn't financially have to do it because we had an income producing property. We had a flip going on that we were standing to make, as far as cash on cash investment, a couple 100% off of.
we had a house we knew
We had
we
a
weren't going to have a
house.
mortgage on.
Yep. And then everything, I don't want to say it went sideways, but like the house got hit by a drunk driver. It got broken into. We're finishing up this remodel and we're like, you know what? I don't know if this is the house for us. We ended up selling that house.
Yep.
Made money on it, which was great. That was kind of our unintentional first flip, but first flip. And, we had to evict all but one tenant out of our 7 units. So
Because nobody was paying rent, turns out. Books were
out,
cooked.
books were cooked. And
We learned a lot of lessons in a very
that was
short
a
period.
great property
All of
in
that,
hindsight.
all of that happened before we had our son. So we did 2 flips, and had that multifamily that we had to.
So we're overnight real estate investors now because we have 3 investment properties being held at once because 2 of them are being flipped at this point. One of them's being rented, and then you have Sarah and I also house shopping for ourselves because every day is a day closer to Brantley coming.
Yep.
And, we found a great little craftsman house in a Victorian home neighborhood. And,
It's magical.
definitely very close to downtown. So there's a lot of characteristics of that property that were not, we didn't love, but, we also loved the convenience because this is where we were flipping houses a couple miles from our rental. And that was that. We closed on that house. I remember we wrote about a $30,000 check with $400 in the checking account because we were banking on 2 more closings. And everything went right. Everything
Thank the Lord.
closed. Praise the Lord. We closed it. No checks bounced.
All in the midst of this, we were also trying to be realtors,
We
like
were.
normal.
We weren't trying. There's nothing.
Yeah,
we were closing deals.
We were closing deals.
So every morning we'd hop on. I'd do about 150 cold calls before noon and try to get some appointments set up. And you would deal with all of our clients that I'd generate the leads for.
Somewhere in the mix of all that, we gave birth to Brantley.
It was wild. And then we bought a bunch of houses.
Yeah,
We bought
we flipped.
bunch of houses.
We flipped.
I feel like we were closing. We were buying one. It fell. I mean, there were weeks we'd buy 2 and close 1. And there were weeks that there were 3 months we wouldn't get anything done because, sometimes if anybody's been real involved in real estate investing, it's just part of purchasing deals and you get a little overextended and you need to consolidate turn some bad debt into good debt. And, we did a lot of that. We learned a lot of lessons. We never needed bailed out though.
Nope.
Never needed bailed out 100%. That's for sure. And great hard money lender. Our hard money lender was actually the man we bought our first house from. And that's who I mean. He's just, anytime we called him, there's just so much trust. I mean, there's still a deed of trust signed and there is a note recorded, but it was never, send me pictures and send me all the comps. It was Tim and Sarah, what do you think it's going to sell for? How long do you think it's going to be? What's the purchase price? How much are you going to spend rehabbing it? And the deal was structured different every time, sorry. A lot of people ask us about this, and I think we're pretty guarded about how exactly we did it, but literally every deal was different. Sometimes he would purchase the home, we'd pay for the remodel, and really where home prices were at that point financially, we'd be about a 50-50 partner. Sometimes he'd buy the home and pay sometimes we'd just almost operate it like a line of credit. Sometimes it'd be a house we were already in and purchased, and he'd help with funding the rehab side of it. But, every step of the way with him, because we trusted him as a person so far, I never felt like we were getting the short end of the stick.
No,
Most
never.
times I wanted to cut him in more percent because this is just a guy that, we wouldn't have been doing what we were doing without him. Like we would have been searching high and low for a lender.
Yeah. And so usually the deal would be like at the closing table, he would get whatever the profit was, and we would had already had a chart or whatever the profit was, he would get cut 50% and we would get cut the other 50%. And he would always say, go find another.
And
Go find
honestly, like
another.
there was just so much trust both ways too. Like there was never any like show me the receipts or who'd you pay. Like we literally just shared a Google sheet, us and him, and we'd bounce back. Hey, we're over budget. Hey, we're under budget. Hey, we're over budget. He always wanted to make sure that Sarah was taking the commission, or really at that point, I guess both of us. But he wanted to make sure that our realtor representative, which was owner agent, usually being Sarah as the listing agent, was getting her whatever, 3.6% typically. He'd even be like, listed at a retail rate, and I want you to get paid. And, there were just a lot of and that's off of the revenue too. Like, so, I mean, really, that a bad deal, that could have been 15, 20%, 30% of the profit. Like, there was nothing but goodwill from all parties.
Yeah.
And I do like to touch on that heavy even in this podcast, because I think there's a lot of people, even right now today, like we talk to people every day that maybe have $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 just because business has been good over COVID and they're real hesitant to do any real estate investing. Like my best advice is find a hard money lender, keep the bank out of it.
Yeah. If possible.
If possible. And sometimes you do a little bit of both. Like you can close a deal with a hard money lender if there's no strict timeline. That's when you pull a HELOC on the property. It's just better to have a hard money lender, in my opinion, although a lot of them now are just getting paid typical interest rates, but they're partners in it. They're not the bank. And it's different. Money's emotional. So for me, when I can call our friend in California that we've done a lot of business with, and I explain the house, and we'd send him pictures because we're friends. He'd be like, oh my gosh. And like the same things would be said by Sarah, him, and I. Like, this is going to be a great house for a family.
Yeah.
We would talk about the end buyer when we purchased the home.
What kind of a person would buy this house?
Like,
what does the family look like?
It's a 2-1 right now. What do we need to do to make it a 3-2? And that's what Sarah and I do. Like, we want this to be, because that was her and I. Like, we're about to welcome our first child in. What works for us? Well, I'll tell you what. We need an office, a nursery. We want Brantley to have a bathtub and a guest-style bathroom, and we want to have a bathroom. And those are the houses that we were designing and executing every day. We did well.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun.
It was so fun. We had a West Coast style, too, which was new at the time.
Yeah, not so much new anymore.
Not so much anymore. Now everybody's from Oregon, Washington, California.
Yeah. And then through all of this, we found a home that we were going to flip, but then Tim was like, I love this home.
Too.
Off market. He's like, I love this home.
This is a funny story. Do you remember how we found the house? I picked Tasty up from McCalla. That was one of our tenants. We called her. That was her nickname, was Tasty. I picked Tasty up.
Yep.
And remember she, and so we had a bunch of tenants over there, and she was one that honestly, like, she was high maintenance, but she was great.
Oh, she was so
awesome.
Great. She'd call
Very
us if
boisterous.
Oh yeah. If anything fishy was going on, she'd call Tim.
Oh yeah.
Middle of the night. Tim, there's somebody down here.
So I picked Tasty up though, and she's like, you've told me for 2 weeks you'd help me get this couch. Honestly, I never told her I'd help her, but I'm finally like, whatever, I'm here. I got an extra hour. We just need to go up to Fountain City, which was 15 minutes each way. I said, I'll go up there. So we go up there, go up to this ranch style house. The people who were living in it had passed away. Outside of the home as a mother and father. They died within like a year or two. It was pretty wild. And so we were meeting with the executor of the home, which was the daughter, and then they had a son as well. And at this point, those two parties involved in making decisions at the house were probably like 50 years old, I'd guess. And so we load up this couch. Tasty pays her, and I said, well, what are you guys going to do with the house? And she said, well, we're going to sell it, but it's going to be as is, blah, blah, blah. I said, great. What do you want for the house? And she threw a number out there, and I said, done. When do you want to close? And this was like Thursday night. I said, I can close it next Friday. This is no big deal. I think she thought I was full of shit. As she should.
As she should when you have it.
Because I think I rolled up in that 90s because my truck had just got totaled. And I rolled up. We just bought this truck cash because we had a loan on my truck anyway. We didn't want that anymore. So we bought this old 90s Ford, and it's probably barely running. And she's like, this kid don't got no money. And she we pursued her. We pursued her like a rutting buck until she signed the paperwork, though, because they wanted to sell it. They just didn't believe that we could buy it.
Yeah. So, anyways, we bought that house, and Tim was like, I want to live in this house. So.
And so, I mean,
I did too. Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I did too.
Single story. We're living in a 2-story.
Yep. So we bought the house. We moved in, completely remodeled it, and this is
the first time in our lives too, which is important. I think that's an important part of the story. First time we fully remodeled a house.
Oh, yeah.
To our liking. and then moved into it. So we had
Yeah.
everything we wanted on
Everything
mine.
we wanted. And we didn't have to live in it while we remodeled. That was
Yeah,
exciting
yeah.
too.
We sold our house to a great friend of ours.
But we moved in and the house needed a fence.
And so I
We've
called.
always had dogs, and
Yeah.
the whole remodel was done, but we had like one or two flips going on at the
And I just
time.
didn't have time to have our
Yeah,
guys do it.
Tim was gone all the time. I have like a 1-year-old,
It
and
needed like 200 feet, so it wasn't
it
super
wasn't even.
substantial. We're like, let's just pay to have it get done.
So
Let's pay to have it done.
so one day, Tim's out running flips and stuff, and I'm at home and it's nap time. And what do wives do during nap time? I'm like, let's check something off the list. So I start calling local fence companies. And Tim gets home and I was like, okay, well, this company said, because I knew what we wanted, So I called and got the price per foot from everybody. We knew how many feet we had. I didn't need somebody to come out and try and sell me. We already knew what we needed.
But even when we tried to get them to come out so we could get a contract, it was pulling.
It was, nobody would answer the phone. The companies that did, the prices were astronomical, like honestly higher than where we are even now.
And the hard part was too, is like, born and bred, like I'm a badass fencer. Like I had the opportunity for a short amount of time to work for arguably one of the most successful fence companies in the U.S. It's based out of Oregon. And so like that was the whole thing, is we were a little bit insiders, and like none of these people were professional that we were calling.
No.
And we could have just been calling the wrong people, but it was one
The
of those
welders
things
are
where
welding out there.
it just wasn't the case.
Yeah, so Tim gets home and I'm like, okay, well, I called these fence companies and this is how much it's going to cost for us to have a fence. And Tim was like, no way, absolutely not.
Or there was like one guy that was like, you buy the material, I'll provide the labor. There was really only a few options.
There was like 2 professional options and the rest were like checking a truck. If you could get them to answer the phone.
Right.
The whole experience was just honestly kind of pathetic. And it was the first time since we moved that we tried to reach out to somebody and like not saying our subs are like illegitimate or anything, but our subs are people we've created relationships with. And, but they are like, look, what I like to say, they're owner operators. So they're the cook, the chef, the busser, and the server all together. But they answer the phone when Tim and I call because they know we're going to call again, I guess, if that makes sense. But this is the first time we reached out to somebody, tried to get a professional to have it done, and had an experience that was far less than what we expected.
Yeah, it was rough. And that was the point to where, honestly, like, not behind your back or anything, but I was also, like, dabbling, putting ads out for some service business and handyman. And I feel bad now because I wasn't going to engage in doing business with people, but it was strictly to get kind of a market touch on like how responsive people would be on Craigslist versus Facebook versus this versus that. And that's when I just told Sarah, like, honestly, like, flipping's great, but the market volatility, because at this point house prices were going through the roof. I was like, I don't know when it's going to plateau. Like, we're paying more and more for each deal,
Making less and less each deal.
Yep. And our time, because we had multiple going on, like things were getting done slower than usual. And it
just felt time to step away from that, I guess.
Felt time. Yeah. And also, like, I was on trial. I wasn't on trial. I was a witness of a murder. I didn't see the murder, but we had one of our tenants at our rental come in and murder somebody and run out to Detroit, and he ended up being, in one of the drug gangs. And it was just one of those things to where, I was dealing with the stress of that, and I was very unhappy, and I didn't really even have a choice. I had to be involved in that. And I was ready to be done being a landlord for a minute.
We
honestly.
also had a very young child at home, so I had to step away from working for a little while.
Absolutely. And it was just, we needed something to where Sarah could manage expectations from home for a while. And, I'd still be running around, but not running around quite like flipping houses, because at that point, like, it was harder to structure the deals. It was harder to structure the finances. Like, even our hard money lenders, like, man, like, when's the talk going to be? If it goes down a little bit, are we still going to make money? Like, there was a lot of times, there in 2016, 17, 18, into 2019, where we're all like, how much higher can it go? And people would ask us our opinion. We're like, I don't know. Maybe not much higher, maybe a lot higher. I mean, we've always been pretty confident in the real estate market, but we had so much money and so much debt in it that it was it was a scary time to be investing. And that's when we just decided Tim's fencing.
Yep. Tim came home one day. He's like, we're going to start a fence company.
Like I came home with that truck. No, I didn't come home with the truck, but I was like, hey, I want to go to Norristown and look at this truck.
Yep.
And, that's when we're still like not fully committed, but let's buy it as a fence truck. It's a great flatbed truck. And brought it home, had the logo for Tim's Construction changed to say Tim's Fencing because it was Tim's Construction remodel when we were out west. And that was it, really. GoDaddy website. Excel spreadsheets and QuickBooks.
Yep. We had a friend that we could rent like a fourth of a lot from, which is so funny because we're fencing in that location next week, which is wildly nostalgic. But there was no office. It was just a place that Tim would go every morning.
Keep our trucks there and a little material.
Our trucks there and some material, and away we went. I answered the phone from home.
Well, really, even before that, it wasn't because they'd just call me before we. Because it was really we had the 255 number, but I kept it because that was actually our cell phone that we used for the rental property. Full circle, and there wasn't even enough phone calls, so I would just want to use that phone to call the distributors and stuff like that, so they weren't calling my personal phone back.
We learned some lessons in Washington, and one of the biggest ones was trying to keep church and state.
And now we don't care at all.
And now we don't care
because we're like, it's so easy to track somebody down.
Yeah, but
gosh, we put an ad out. You did our hiring. You got us 2 pretty good guys.
Yeah.
One was from Oregon.
One was from
Portland.
Lived in
Oregon, from Florida.
Yeah.
And then the other one was from here.
Shout out to Josh Powers.
Miss you.
Still love you.
I love you, man. Which he's doing great.
Yeah.
Their kids are doing great. He was the first employee that I was really like, damn, I'm invested in this guy. And you're a cool dude. And you're ethical and big heart. But so it was him.
We had that other guy we hired that puked all over that.
Poor guy. Oh, God, it was like a 110-degree day. Yep. But so I'd go out, sell the jobs, install them because for the first few weeks, I was literally installing fence every single day with them. And, with our connections to the real estate community, like that was our lead source.
That was such a blessing.
Shout-outs and real estate because...
Such a blessing because we had a real estate community that knew us personally, believed in us, and then just started sending their clients to us. That was such a blessing.
Some of them were probably just happy we're doing less real estate because I'd burn those phones up. They're like, we'll just send them fence jobs so they're not cold calling the same people I'm calling. Got to keep them busy. But, God, that was a good time, too.
And then
all of our work was right around our shop, too, because that's the cool part about Oakwood, Lincoln Park, Old North, 4th and Gill. Like, we always did yard signs. I've been a big yard sign guy since, God, I did it out west even. And we littered them.
Yep.
And we used to get them from Jim McMichael's right here, a local business. And people just see our sign, and then we'd put a sign in front of the shop. And
literally on every corner we'd put a yard sign.
And they'd call, though.
And they'd call.
And they'd call, and it'd be me or Sarah that answers, and it'd be me running the estimate, it'd be me installing the fence. Sorry, I'll stop going back and forth on the microphone. That sounds bad. But, and that was just cool.
Yeah.
It was busy times.
And then pretty quickly, the phones became too much for me to manage with a toddler at home. And so one of our next hires was Heather, our neighbor, she was so amazing. Everybody in this story has such a big role, and we have nothing but thanks for all these people that have helped us get to where we are. So Heather helped me. She also had kids, but her babies were in school at the time. So I would try and do the phones in the morning.
And then you guys would either pass off the phone and the business stuff or Brantley some days.
Or, some days she would take Brantley for me and I would do whatever I needed to do. Or some days we had all of our clients fit in this plastic tote. So I would put the cell phone in it and the tote with all of our clients, and I'd walk it across the street to her.
And it's just so funny because, we were not in the money on anything
yet.
Like, this was a piece of crap Android phone.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything about Androids, but this was, the free phone.
The free phone.
Back when they still did that.
Yeah.
And it never worked real well. It had been dropped on the job site 100 times.
Yeah. And then...
concrete stuck in the speaker. It was just... And y'all would do that all day,
Yeah.
every day for
Or
months.
we would just work together. Our CPA would come and we would do all of our taxes at the kitchen table.
Which were 100 ways, because we had real estate income, flipping
Yeah.
houses income,
Yeah.
fencing losses, no income, just losses at
income.
that point. And, you know, really, because we were still flipping houses financially need to, like, we didn't take a paycheck for till the 25th month. The
Yep.
25th month, if you look on paychecks, I am still employee 001 because somebody had to be, that was
Yeah.
an owner.
Yeah.
But we didn't take a paycheck for 25 months,
Yeah.
which I just am so thankful we didn't have to, because
Mm-hmm.
I honestly can say Tim's Fencing would not be where it is right now.
Absolutely not.
If we had to pay our mortgage
Yeah.
and pay our light bill and do everything else. And now some of those days sucked because, you know, I'd be help building fences and I'd have to leave to go meet a subcontractor to flip, or I'd have to go grab B so you could do it, or vice versa. And then when I was gone, I'd get back to the fence job site and it'd be wrong, and we'd
Yep.
tear it apart
Yep.
and we'd rebuild
Yep.
it. And
Or even if we had the money, like we had profited that month, we always put it back into the
always
business in
because
some
of
way, shape, or form.
trucks and
Trucks,
tools,
tools,
and, you know, because we
Some
bought,
sort of marketing.
which we still have our first truck we ever bought and our third truck. So we bought like an '03 F350 cabin chassis flatbed. We got a dang deal.
Yeah.
And then we bought that gas stick shift that we kept it. We just sold that a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And then, oh wait, maybe we bought one more. But then we bought the 450. Remember that 450 flatbed? And the guy gave us the little beaver too that he
Oh, yeah.
found. He found. We bought this flatbed truck. This
Yeah.
is a great story. And now, especially in the southeast, all of us use the same augers. It's called a little beaver. Has a motor, a little transmission on it, and a long arm. And it's so your augers over here. You drag it around on a cart. And they're expensive. I mean, they're $8,000 with a bit. And
Yeah.
so at this point, we had some old Home Depot rental 2-man augers and digs and a rock bar. Because out west, we never used augers anyway because the digging was easy. And we showed up to buy this truck, and I think he wanted $10,000 on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And he's the father to like a very famous Bronco builder.
Yeah,
And a
yeah.
great guy. Wood sale, like he splits wood for a living.
Yeah.
Just that guy that you walk in there and you're like,
Was he the one?
grandpa vibes.
Was he the one that offered us to stay and eat steak that night or something?
Yeah, yeah.
wanted to
No,
fix
no,
us
no, no,
dinner?
no, no. That was
Oh.
we bought something else. That was the guy in Foxton you're talking about. There with the
okay.
hikers, but
Okay.
I'm sure he would have probably fed us. This guy's great, and he's like, he's at 10,000. I'm like, I can really only give 8 for this truck, and it was nice. It was a very.
But
nice
really, that
truck.
was all we had.
Yep. Well, that was, and he's like, I think we had a little more, but, and he's like, well, I'll tell you what, if you do 9, I'll throw something in that you will want, but I'm not going to tell you it is. I'm going to give you a tool that's going to help you in fence, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. And like, we're like, there's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, $9,000 is still $1,000 off. I'm like, I don't really give a shit. Let's pay him the $9,000. Give him the $9,000. And he comes out behind that Bronco
Yeah,
with a
I remember.
freaking little beaver auger.
Brand new.
And God, that's a God thing right
Yeah,
there, though.
brand
That's a
new.
freaking God. He said somebody dropped it off the back of their truck, leaving what's now Master How It Goes, Jameson Fence at the time,
Yeah.
who we bought from.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah,
said,
I
I called them. They asked everybody. They could never find who it was, which they could have been leaving merchants. So if there's a
Yeah.
local fencer here that lost a little beaver in probably 2018, call me. But I probably still have it out there. And we were just like, oh, good Lord. And like, I don't think you even realized how, because I
No.
even brought it up to buy one because they were so expensive. But that took us, like as a 2-man, 3-man crew building fence, from being able to get 100 feet done in a day
Yeah.
to 180. Like
Yeah.
it was such a thing.
Yeah.
It was such a freaking thing.
Yep.
So
And then Heather was the first one to make any sort of swag because she had like that cricket.
Cricket, yep.
And we would cricket everybody's shirts, and that's how the swag thing got started.
yeah, we're very big. If anybody knows Tim's Fencing in Knoxville, it's because like we do this. Like this is all
Somebody-
of our stuff.
yeah.
Just cool, fun. Let's talk about fencing.
That was Heather.
Because we hung out with that family. Those were great friends of ours, too. So we'd spend a lot of time after work. And her husband, Chris. Like, we'd all come up with these ideas for shirts. And
Yeah.
now that we have a cricket and you do it often, I'm like, holy cow, we'd ask her to make 40, 50, 60
And they had
shirts.
all the fencing that you would have to like floss out, and I'm like,
And she would never
she'd
complain.
never
I mean,
complain.
You know, it's
the
just-
little dude,
Oh,
you'd
yeah.
have to floss out. But then we outgrew where we were and we moved to a bigger location. So our
We did.
business was growing.
And that was after, because we started by renting the half the lot, then the whole lot, then half the building, then the whole building, and we
Yep,
still
it was
needed
just
more room.
much too small. Yeah, so we moved.
Callahan Drive, we had, what, 3 acres there we leased and a house?
And that's the location where we started transitioning from having in-house crews to sub crews. We had our first sub crew reach out to us and see if we had any work for them. And I remember just being so excited. It was Victor.
There was a lot of firsts there, because not even outside of that, we hired our first general manager. We hired our first professional salesman outside of Heather, because Heather had been estimating and office staff.
Yep, Heather
to
had
help me.
Yep.
So her and I were estimating.
Yep.
You were in the office full time. She was in the office part time.
Yep.
And then we
actually had a physical office.
We had a physical office.
So that was cool. It wasn't at our house anymore.
Bought a bunch of old teachers' desks.
We did.
Outfit it.
Yep.
And let's think what else. First general manager, first salesman, second salesman, third salesman. I think we got up to 5 salesmen there. Promoted.
First
sub crew. We used to run 6 in-house crews. Trucks, trailers, tools. And then one day, a handful of them decided to get together, and they didn't feel like they were making enough money, and I didn't feel like they were working hard enough. We had a huge, gosh, I let like 11 or 13 people go that day. But that was a big moment for Tim's Fencing, because we were like, how are we going to install fence the next day? But we had, we just weren't being productive. We weren't making any money because wages were killing us. We weren't getting enough done. Like, Tim's Fencing had to change.
Oh, and then we had that day that me and Caitlin, because Heather ended up leaving, and
was it Selena then at this point,
no,
though?
I can't remember.
It was both of them for a while.
But we had to call all of our clients and push them back
2
weeks or 3 weeks, and like
there were only a few that were mad.
There were only a few, but thinking about that now, like I could not imagine calling all of our clients and doing that. But we did it.
But then we got Victor. And
COVID happened at that location too.
But we had subs at that point. Praise the Lord, because we had Victor and Eduardo. Those were our first 2.
Yeah.
And then a handful of them that just were not very good. And we had Tommy Rhines. Tommy Rhines was probably really our first subcontractor. Then Victor. And gosh, we were just building such a great team, and we just treated the subcontractors differently. Though they were, to us, we wanted them to be employees, but they didn't want that because they like getting paid by the foot. But we knew the wives, we knew the kids, we still do this day. And then COVID
hit. But honestly, COVID was such a blessing for Tim's Fencing. It was not.
I mean, we lost so much money in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely.
The first 90 days, I was like, and if we lost it, we were losing our house.
Yeah.
We were losing everything.
Oh, yeah.
But we made it.
Yeah, it was really scary. And then, we
And then really at that point's when we started switching over to buying in bulk. We bought a skid steer to load, a full size. We changed our business structure. That was the first time, second time, because we went to subs. And then that was the first time we were really like, okay, we need to buy more material at once to buy it cheaper. I said, and also we're going to hold our installers to a higher level of customer service, install quality, but we're going to pay them more. Yep. And so at this point too, like Sarah and I are still, this is about the time we take our first paycheck. It was over.
Well, and it was just you.
It was just me.
I didn't take my first paycheck
for probably another 8 or 9 months.
For a while, yeah.
And so subcontractors, COVID, everything got busy.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. But if you are a person out there listening to this and you are thinking that you want to start your own small business,
don't quit your job yet.
No. Do quit your job. But also before you quit your job, just make sure your family is in a financial place that you do not need to take a paycheck from that business for at least 12 months.
But do you know what's funny? I think about this too a lot. And I tell people this, and I'm not proud of this, but when we were flipping houses, like we had so many like construction credit cards and personal credit cards. I have never worked harder than when I've had $100,000 in credit card debt at 24% interest. You would never. Every moment of my day was scheduled because I was so time blocked because I'm like, well, I mean, I'm on one card I'd be paying $1,700 a month in interest, and it's like we're trying to close deals and get all this done. So I will say that if you're somebody, but I am somebody that loves misery as far as I just love a huge challenge. And if you can handle it, I guess just pull the loan and get it paid off. But it's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary.
I just wanted to reiterate that.
I mean, if you could do an online job, there's a lot of work from home. I
Yeah.
think about that now. Like, gosh, if work from home was as big as it was now,
Yeah.
that would have been me just working at night at a call center or something, building fence during the day. Like,
Yeah.
that would have been perfect.
But so, kind of to bring us where we are today, Tim's Fencing's been in business 7 years?
No,
8 years?
like
6 years? 6 years?
I don't know. It was like our first install was June of 2018.
Yeah.
So that's all 5 years.
5 years.
5.5.
We now are at a location due to a close family friend that we were able to purchase, and we own this location.
Let's see.
We have a staff of about 25 now.
Which pushes up to 30
Which,
usually.
well,
during
right
the
now
summer.
it's December, so we're slow, but
25 to 30. We have really Sarah at this point, Sarah and I just run greater picture, staffing. Like I'm still involved in
do
the
stupid
fence
shit like
side.
this. Like this is not
We have the
benefiting Tim's Fencing
podcast,
at all right
'cause,
now.
You know, we have a marketing executive, a sales manager, an office manager, a production manager,
We are
quality manager.
We are so blessed to have such an amazing team.
But I think we also did it though because there has to be the servant mindset. You know what I mean? Like there's still, you know, it's not even like it's honestly outside. There's security of money for us here, but you know, there's months where, you know, we have staff members, especially that are commission based, that make more than we do. Like we've never had the absolute need to be the highest paid, and I think when you take that back seat to it, because. And it's funny when my car dealer friend said this too. He's like, I'm never going to be the guy every month after month after month that makes the most money. He's like, but I own the asset. And like, that's really it for us. And, you know, with working with banks and everything else, we've had the opportunity to have some extremely high quality audits of our finances and evaluations of our business done. And like, really for me this last year, like that mindset shook for me. It's not even about necessarily the month over month income. It's about like we've built a team, we've built a system that's an asset for us at this point. And you know, it's like I love our staff too. Like these are our friends.
Love
Anybody here
our
in Knoxville,
staff.
like we don't surround ourselves with a ton of people outside of Tim's Fencing. It's mostly like our staff members and watching them get married and have children and
Rooting
buy
them on,
houses and-
like being truly like living life together with our staff members.
But then again, like I wouldn't have done this all if we didn't have Brantley. Like that was a big thing for me. Sarah wanted security, and you know it's my provider instinct. And I said, well, let me figure out how I can have my cake and eat it too. Because also like I like working for myself. I'm probably not going to go get a job ever. I don't do well in a position of being employed. And to me, because I had to sell this to you. You were not a fan.
No.
You were not. You're like, let's just go get jobs.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck that.
I so desperately the flipping lifestyle, the not getting paid for months on end and then getting a huge paycheck and just like praying that everything goes okay for that huge paycheck, that, you know, the buyer's happy and something wild doesn't come up with some wild home inspector and, you know, and the deal doesn't fall through. And you have to hope that everything goes just right for you to get that
Especially
big paycheck.
then, because they were still intensive home inspections.
Especially then, yeah.
You know,
like
we maybe had 3 offers on a property.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a year ago when there's 30 offers on a property.
yeah. But maybe it's the maternalness in me, but I was just like, we have a baby now. Like we can't live this lifestyle where we
Yeah.
just get paid every now and then.
Yeah, but on the same time, it's like, you know, like it's been years at this point since we've had an auto loan. Like we don't borrow on our, and that was sacrifices. Like we've never borrowed on toys. Like those of you that know us know we've always been into boating and this and that. But I'll tell you what, we had a piece of shit boat that we owned with a friend. We only had to pay for half of it and half the slip and half the maintenance. And then we bought a boat on our own because we wanted a ski boat. We bought a Sea Ray. Guess what? It was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But it ran most of the time.
Yeah.
We worked on it a little less on the water. We broke down a few.
Yeah.
And then Daddy over here wanted a wake boat, so we bought a piece of shit wake boat. You know, like this is just an example of what we like to do in free time. Guess what? It broke down a whole lot on the water.
Yeah.
But I do think that's important, and I especially think with Instagram culture and TikTok culture, it's always like, let's film it like this, and I got American Forces on my $100,000 truck,
Yeah.
etc. Like, I don't even think that's pretty. Like, and I get like you have to go into debt for business. Like we've
Yeah.
been there.
Oh
We've
yeah.
borrowed and paid off, borrowed and paid off, borrowed and paid off. But like that's not running a business. I'm sorry, buying the F450 Platinum with leather, heated cooled seats, 13-inch display, putting the 6-inch lift on it, 24-inch American Forces, just to tow your skid steer around to move some dirt. Nobody can sell me that as a good idea. Because
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, even the truck that I personally drive, which isn't logoed, it's a work truck, but it's not logoed. And it's got leather and all that. But I'll tell you what, I don't cry when it gets a scratch on it. I don't cry when it gets a dent. It still goes, I still go dig holes. Hell, I dug holes yesterday.
Yeah.
Maybe only 2 or 3, but it's just one of those things as a business owner. Like, I don't think you should have to drive the cheapest trucks when you roll up to the house and he's like, well, they're going to be cheap. But
Yeah.
I also
Because
don't
people are
think
judging you on that.
absolutely they are.
Absolutely.
But I bought the diesel.
Yeah, we've done
I did
both.
it.
We've
I
done both.
bought the mega cab.
Yeah.
It was the night edition. It had a big old screen. I'll tell you what, it drove like crap. I traded it in.
Yeah.
Got a used 1500. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a lot of there's a lot of false envy behind business owners as well. Like you're not gonna get a fly on a private jet. You're not gonna have a private resort on Marco Island all to yourself. Like that's just not the reality. That's the 1 in 10 million. And
I feel like that's the Instagram
absolutely.
version. And
I'll
you
tell
and
you.
I, we struggle, which I think honestly is going to be a hindrance on this podcast because we don't do social media. Like not at all. But I personally, I know Tim
You
too.
have to dig pretty deep to figure something out about us.
I don't want to post my whole life. Like it's just not important to me.
No. But it's even like everything we're doing now, like, and I'm not going to sit here saying, well, we're living paycheck to paycheck. Like, I'm compensated at a level higher than I would have imagined I'd be at this age in my life. But at the end of the day, it's not like we're taking that money and, like, you and I mean, hell, like, everything's public information. I guess go figure out where we live and look at the street view of our house. Like, we don't live in $1 million house. We don't live on the lake. We don't, that's just not. It's not really what we do. Like we don't go stay in the Disney Princess Castle when we go to Disney.
I do think part of that is culture here in East Tennessee. Like I feel like people are just far less materialistic here than they are back home.
Oh, absolutely.
I wonder if we lived home, if it would be different. Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the bouginess I get into though, like, because obviously everybody spends their money on something. I love having a badass gym set up at the house. We bought a cold plunge, like when we do something like that, like to me, it's easier to spend the money like on health and fitness or, like when I go to Weigel's, I'll get a Fiji water, rather than a whatever regular water bottle. But I just think keeping yourself in check's important. But I like living. I mean, like the times we take a nice vacation. I'm like, this is cool.
Yeah.
This ain't every day. No. I love it all. And now, full circle, right? So then this is the vacillation of human beings. And Tim and Sarah especially, because we're like, all right, well, real estate investing, maybe that's not even for us. Maybe we'll get out all together. And then, what do we do this year? We bought
5 properties.
Yeah, we bought some dirt. And so even some with some real dirty title work that we're just sitting here waiting to close a little bit later in the year. But
we're building 3 houses actively.
I don't know why we do it to ourselves.
But also, I talking to other business owner friends, I think this is normal that Tim and I, the stress of being a business owner is cumbersome. And we vacillate, and thank goodness we vacillate with each other. We yin and yang with each other so much that, like, for instance, Tim can handle the stress and he's okay. All the problems, it isn't overwhelming to him versus me at the same time on the other end of the spectrum, maybe like, let's sell everything, live on a bus, and I'm going to make flower headbands at music festivals. And then, maybe the next week or the next month, those roles may switch a little bit. So I just have like, everything is not rainbows and daisies all the time. and just having my husband, like, I couldn't imagine doing all of this by myself. I couldn't have done it.
I mean, I think the partnership is part of it. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's a hard thing, though. A lot of spouses can't work together, and we're going on like year 10 of it. So
Yep.
it's a little bit different. And like even past that, just with the stress of the business the last couple of years, like I don't think we would have necessarily been as keen to work together if we didn't have Brantley.
Right.
You know, because I do think just disparity in it all, it's really easy for me like, well, this is for Brantley. You know, and that's not me saying that Brantley needs to be the heir to Tim's fencing, but you know, like something we've personally taken a lot of focus on, and I'm not sure if we were planning on talking about this though, is like the estate planning. Like, what do you do with this when you got it? You know, and like, you know, we're no Donald Trump today or tomorrow, but like at the end of the day, like we try to make a wise investment every year, and we try to do this, and we try to do that, and like really my goal of all of that is like I want Brantley to have a very, very strong work ethic, but I don't want him to have to do what we did. You know, I don't want him to have so much unknown. Like I want us to be able to have, I want us to be able to been engaged in enough markets that we can give him sound advice in whatever he's done, because you know, I grew up in a home very much so that pushed college, and you know, after in schooling after the required amount by state law, and so did you. And you know, like neither of my parents are bachelor degree holding people, but they definitely wanted more for me, and you know, there to them like that was the only option was
Yeah.
hey, like let's go to college, let's get a good job.
Yeah.
You too?
Well, I think, were you the first? Well, I was the first in my family to get my bachelor's degree. I think. I don't know if my cousin beat me. I think I'm the first because I was the oldest, but it's
Yeah, you're
just
the
our
first.
generation. It was either go get your degree, or the other advice I had was join the military, being that military family I grew up in.
And neither of those are horrible options.
No, they
But
just,
nobody knew there was an option of like nobody said, hey, why don't you go be an esthetician and have your own salon? Nobody
Yep.
said, why don't you go be, you know, and own your own you know, and I think it is harder for, in that aspect, I think that's harder for women, because I do think a new thing right now for men, at least the last decade, have been the trades,
Yeah.
you know, and I think women are overlooked in that quite often, you know, and that's just by bad regard by our country in general. But, you know, that's always been a good option in the last decade or so for the men of this country is, hey, go get a plumbing license, get some experience, open a plumbing company.
Yeah.
And really in the Southeast even, like I don't know a whole lot of women that we grew up with at home that have their own salon or nail bar or
No.
anything like this, but you have met a dozen women to say even that work for themselves and like have a salon space for other haircutters, nails, brows, all of that. And
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
young women, sub
Very
30,
young women, sub 30,
are
yeah.
finding
A lot of
an
success in it.
extreme amount of success. And honestly, it's funny because they're all in the same clique. But you know,
They are, yeah.
like people support each other.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just, and I'm sure there was moments where my parents were like, what are you doing? And you know, like my mom's dad, like she grew up working in a household that was a sole proprietor tradesman, and there were definitely times of where that well dries up and
Yeah.
you're rubbing pennies together to heat the house. And I know that, you know, if I got any negative flack from my family, it was really just out of like them not wanting me and you to go through
To have
those
that
hard
struggle.
times. But I think willpower goes a long way in there. Willpower goes a hell of a long way.
I think my parents thought that we were just crazy.
Oh, yeah, probably at first,
Absolutely.
especially, yeah. And friends, and everybody. But, you know, I think everybody just also forms their opinion. They're like, oh, your parents are just buying you all this stuff. And I think we've outgrown that off.
Yeah. Oh,
Obviously.
yeah, I think we've outgrown
There's
that.
a whole lot of negative talk from a whole lot of people, though, in regards to.
I think because of all that negative talk, you and I have stepped away from being so, like, we do not have a big friend group. We do not post on social media. Like, we're very private because we don't want so many people to make their preconceived notions about our life. We're like, let us try you out a little bit, and then we'll let you in on our.
Sure.
So this feels pretty vulnerable to me to like do a podcast like this.
I'm like, let the haters hate.
Who I'm not like.
Let the haters hate.
Tim loves the hate.
I mean,
I'm
I've
like,
made-
the hate's
but-
gonna make me cry.
Also, like in our business too, and I think this is something we struggled with at first. I'm going to get back to why I'm bringing this up. Like, at a lot of times there can be only one chief. And
Yeah.
like you and I have had some substantial headbutts in this department, and honestly, we've vacillated between who the chief is. But also like I made some bad decisions for all of our businesses last year, and like we'd been on a winning streak for a long, long time. But I had two different business ventures lose money to the six-figure tune, and we had some staff members that costed us a lot of money because I wasn't overseeing anything. And that was a rough year. That was last year mentally for me in business was probably some of the hardest, because it's also Brantley's at the age where I want to be able to be home close to the time that he's getting home. I want to be able to coach his sports teams, be his trusted advisor, and that's a hard thing to balance, doing 100% at work while also trying your best. I don't think you can ever do 100% at home. Parents aren't perfect, but you're trying to do your best, trying to make every day count. And that fucked us last year, just me not having clarity in what the goal was. I spread myself too thin in every business venture that we had. Like literally I spread thin at Tim's Fencing and at the other two companies. And then at the same time, like we'd bought McDaniel technically last calendar year, and you and I we were never over there, you know?
McDaniel's a flip that we bought. It's our first flip that we bought that we actually had to tear the house down.
Which is one of our new builds, which is still going to make money, which blows
It's
my
going to be
mind.
fine.
But
Mistakes happen. It's okay. But yeah.
that was rough last year. This year, I guess. I'm already, my mind's already in 2024. I'm referring to 2023 because I'm already in January. So
Yeah.
it's just what I do. I'm a month ahead every month.
Yeah. But I don't think we've ever sat down with any one person and kind of have told that whole story from start to
Yeah,
finish.
that was very few details in it too. That could probably be a 5-hour podcast.
It really could,
There's some good jewels in there we skipped right over.
yeah, we'll circle back to that. But Milo asked us to sit down and do this as just like a good general intro. I guess give some sort of validity to what Tim and I say and what we've been through in our
That's who
life.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
And
gist
then
of it.
if you guys listened last week, you heard from our son Brantley.
Yep.
So, and according to him, this is Brantley's Tim's Fencing.
Right.
So
Brantley's Tim Sensing. But I think for now, that's a good place to kind of end it. I think
that's it.
I
Yeah.
think the team ordered pizza. It's a rainy day. So
I think they already ate. We got some set aside for us.
did they say that?
Yeah, Stephanie texted me.
Oh, because I wouldn't be surprised if they ate it all.
No, she saved some. Well, those of you who we love you. The rest of us, maybe we'll love you someday.
And that's our side of the fence.
Our side.